for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to start
Yeah.
by saying that I bought your book, and everybody, we're gonna talk about this book a lot. And I know you're writing another one. Do you have a title?
Sparkly and Street.
Sparkly and Street. This one is super sparkly, everything. And the first time I saw you in person, you were wearing a pink sequined mini skirt. And I was like, damn, I want that mini skirt. I don't wear skirts, but I wanted that one. So I want to start by asking, because that was the thing that kind of drew me to you. And I'm curious to know what is it about sparkles? Like what connects you with sparkles? Because I love I mean, obviously I love my sparkles. So what connects you to sparkles?
Oh, so yummy. Well, I grew up as a dancer, right? So we had all things sequins and dipped in sparkles anyways. And if it didn't have enough sequins on it, the teacher would sew more sequins in. I was like, yes, this is what we're doing, huh? And it seemed like because of where I grew up, and I grew up in poverty, and these costumes were always, we did fundraisers and we did a lot of things to raise money in order to purchase the costumes. And then the dance teacher would make a lot of alterations in order to really amplify them on stage. And I just remember thinking, sequence is where the money is, right? This is what it feels like to be rich in the sparkly things. And then for a long time in my life, I avoided all things sparkly and or feminine because I developed this program from my trauma that it was dangerous.
Yeah.
And then when I did the work and I went to therapy and I, started healing, I started slowly returning back to those things that I really did enjoy, but kind of stuffed them down to protect myself, air quotes. And then, like, if you go around my house, there's not a lot of sparkle. I don't live in the sparkle. But
you're not just tossing glitter everywhere.
Right. But my notebooks are sparkly. I have a pen that's sparkly and lights up. I like sparkle on my clothes. I like to wear a lot of color like that because yes, exactly. Like little accents of sparkle to kind of stay rooted and remember who I am. And I wrote about this in the story. In the book, how my daughter loved to put glitter on everything. And no matter how much you clean glitter, you find it a week, a month, a year later. So you're like, I haven't used glitter in a year. Why am I still cleaning glitter? And it gets into the nooks and the crannies. And you can't really find it until the sun hits it and it illuminates and sparkles in the room. And then it's like, oh, there's that one piece of sparkle. Oh, yum. Like to live in that and to carry this kind of idea of sparkle in you so that it gets into the nooks and crannies. And when the light hits it, it illuminates, right? Oh,
I love
that. I live in a metaphor, girl.
I know this is what I love about you is like you have all these analogies and stories, and like everybody's gonna now see the genius that is you.
Thank you.
You know what's funny? So you were talking about the sparkle and like how the glitter gets stuck everywhere. And I was thinking about, so growing up, in Pakistan, we had the crappiest little Christmas tree, like so crappy. It was like tiny little tree. And we had no tinsel, but I always saw these American trees that had all this tinsel on it. And I thought, oh my God, tinsel is so rich and American and wonderful, right? But all we had was this we borrowed the Christmas tree from the school my mother worked at because we didn't actually have our own. And we borrowed the tinsel from the school. So we borrowed the tinsel. And the tinsel was that old school tinsel that was like heavy. It was made out of like the metal, like actual metal.
Aluminum foil.
Yeah, it's like super heavy. Yeah. And I literally like each one I would hang, and it was precious to me. So when I came to the States, I brought that tinsel with me. So I had like this little bit of tinsel, but then I bought 40 bags of freaking tinsel. And you can't even see my tree with all the tinsel, but I still use that from like my childhood. I used that heavy tinsel up until I think about a year, like maybe 5 months before we moved out of my old house. Wow. I found the last vestiges of that little bit of joy from my 3-year-old self. And it makes me think about, like, you're talking about finding this glitter. And it's like, you know what? It's like when I found that tinsel that was like from my childhood. And it was literally the sun hit it. And I'm like, oh my God.
I love that.
I
love that. And like the availability to be open to these moments of joy. I love that story so much. Write that down. That's a good story.
I know. I knew, you know what? I had to tell it because I knew that you would be like, right. So Maria is also my coach. By the way, did I tell everyone that your name is Maria Milagros, or did I just jump in and say, hey, Maria's here. Maria's here.
We just dived right in.
Hey guys, by the way, my guest today is Maria Milagros, and I thanked her for coming, but I forgot to tell you who she was. So now you know. So I'm actually really curious about this because in our sessions, we've talked a lot about how I found joy in trauma and what my perspective is on that. But the interesting thing about your book is that you talk a lot about finding joy in trauma. And that's one of the reasons why I really felt connected with you, because it's not like you had a life of ease where people were feeding you bonbons and shit, but but you're not bitter, you're not angry, you're not, and like for a long time, I always felt like, at least up until say April of 2018, I felt like the way to be like, I was hardened, I was protecting myself, I was angry, there was a lot of things. So I'm really curious to learn, like, what were you ever angry? Like, how did
Oh my gosh, yes. For decades upon decades. I'm older than I look. Yeah, for a long time, I was very angry. And oh gosh, I was known as the aggressive one in my family. And it was very much known, don't really talk to her because she's going to give it to you straight and hurt your feelings in the process because she doesn't care, kind of thing. And it was, yeah, oh man, I was angry. And I was so angry that I had to do court mandated anger management when I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
Like angry. Yeah. So I'm sitting there in this court mandated anger management, and the woman is taking attendance. And there's about 30, 40 kids my age, right? Sitting in a big old circle in this old church that is no longer a church. And they do anger management, AA, like those kind of things in this place. And a bunch of us are sitting in this circle, and I'm a wise ass, and I'm angry, and I'm pissed off, and I want everybody to feel as miserable as I do. So the woman's taking attendance, and then she goes, okay, so we're going to start off with some breathing. My eyes rolled to the back of my head, counted a couple of hair follicles, like way back there. I raised my hand, and when she turned around, she's like, yes, you have a question. I said, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard. Because I'm angry and I want to piss everybody off, and I want
right. You're like, I'm going to make you mad. You're not going to want to breathe when I'm done with you.
Yes. And then she very calmly, very collected, very smooth, like I had no effect on her, pulled up her little clipboard, started flipping through the names, and said, and what is your name? And I said, Maria. And she looks and she goes, oh, okay, Maria. So she must have had a note on her little clipboard. She goes, okay, Maria, so either you practice breathing with us, or I let the judge know you didn't want to participate. Just like that, so collected. And I just went, right? And I took a deep breath, like, whatever, bitch, in my head. But then through the process of getting to know this woman, and then she would share these small nuggets of her story. And when you asked her question, she's like, we're not getting into that. But she would drop a nugget to let you know, I've been there. I am not just so I thought, oh my gosh, it is possible. It is possible to let go of this anger and to get to this other place, to the degree that a teenager trying to push your buttons, she had like a force field. She's like, no, thank you. Not letting it in. Right? Like she was so cemented in who she was that she was not allowing me to even push her buttons, and very calmly was like, okay, participate, don't participate. What do you want me to tell the judge? I was like, oh crap. And that's when I really first started learning about breath work and started learning about, I statements and honoring your feelings, and what is your feeling called, and when was the last time you named it, and what are you talking about? We don't name feelings, we punch faces. Right? And like going through that process at such a young age, I didn't really fully understand the impact that it had on me until much later. And then like I went back to therapy and I started doing a bunch of work and stuff. And that was really the beginning of this evolution, this transformation of no longer, or rather, I was going to say surrendering the anger, but you don't really surrender it. You have to decide to almost transmute it. And so I started doing the work to transmute it and envelop it in love, recognizing anger doesn't exist for no reason. There's a reason why people are angry, and it came from somewhere probably really harmful and traumatic. So I'm going to just love on that part of myself to the degree that it still is like this residue of it, right? There's remnants of it, but it does not dominate.
Yeah.
When it pops up, it's an indication and information that I had trauma, and whatever triggered me, because right, it's my stuff. So whatever triggered me then becomes information like, ooh, why did that push that button? And why was that button pushable?
Where did that come from? That happened to me this morning. Someone said something totally innocuous and it pushed a button and I responded not in a great way. And fortunately we're very close. So we actually talked through it and
nice.
I was like, shit. And so it's exactly as you're saying, like you find a way to deal with it. So it doesn't hurt.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt quite so much. Oh my God, that's so magical. So let me ask you something.
And then it becomes information, right? Like when I feel myself get angry, I breathe into it, honor it, call it anger. Right? All the things that I learned from anger management when I was 15, I'm still using at 45. And so I breathe into it, I honor it, I call it anger, and then I say, okay, what is this moment about? What is this really about? What is it trying to teach me? And why was that button pushable? Right? And then it usually goes back to, most likely than not, some basic care thing that I miss. Like, did I need to stay out all those
hours? Oh my God. I wish you had said that, because it is always something like that and it pisses me the fuck off. Like where it's like, just the other day I was thinking that, you know what, I had to like you actually were like, you need to go meditate. And so I'm like, okay, I go, because I hadn't been doing that. Yeah. And I meditated and I felt much better. And for the week after, I was feeling so good. And I was like, oh, you know what? I said to him, I really need to meditate to make sure I feel like I'm at my best. And I've said this statement probably 13 times in the last several, months, right? Yeah. I keep forgetting. I keep forgetting, but then you do it and you're like, oh yeah, I don't get mad when I meditate.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Like, oh, I have to make this a mandate in my life. Like, yeah.
It's hard though. Cause you said something earlier that I think was super interesting, because it's something I read that resonates with me, is you said that you did it when you were 15, but that you didn't fully realize the impact of it until you were much older. And I think that's so interesting, because I think when we were growing up, right, and we were going to school, you go to school, you take the test, and now you've proven you know this knowledge. So it's almost as if you were told something and you need to prove you know that knowledge within at least usually like a test in the next couple of weeks, and then again maybe at the end of the year. But like there was an immediacy to proving that you had learned something. And so it programs us, I think, to like feel like we need to learn lessons quickly, and especially life lessons. I know I just thought of this while you were talking. So now I'm like, wait a minute, let's talk about this. Because you talked specifically about, you actually went through the process of learning the lesson then, and probably had a huge impact on you, but then it wasn't until years later that you learned it again. And now you took more out of it. So I want to hear more, like, tell me a little bit about that, your idea on that. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm kind of like, ooh, it's interesting.
So good. I think we talked about this before, not exactly the same way, but there was a study that was done in people who are going to a new place that has a certain amount of squiggly squigs.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Like you become dependent on the GPS, and you need the GPS for a certain number of times. And the average number of times is 22.
That is so crazy to me, that it's 22 times. So you got to go someplace with GPS 22 times before you know the way.
Before you know the way, before you fully trust yourself to know the way. Because when you first start out, you use the GPS, and then a couple of times you think, I don't need it right now, I'll just start the journey. And then you get to a certain point, you're like, oh, I don't remember. Pull out the GPS or put it in the phone, right? Yeah. And then each time that you practice and trust yourself a little bit more, you need it less and less until it solidifies, and then it becomes the thing that you just know. So like knowing this, I go, oh my gosh, I have to be nicer to myself, because what we learned in school was via memorization for a temporary moment, knowing we had a test to prove something. And then you're absolutely right. We live this life feeling like we always have to prove something.
And you're always proving something.
Right. And the only way to actually learn is experientially. Yeah. Right. If I memorize numbers and data, I can put those back on a page when the test comes, but I'm not experiencing it, like downloading and integrating it
into your personhood.
Yes. And it's like cellular, So when I'm 15 years old, it's the first time that I'm learning it. It's almost like memorization. And then through the course of my life, I'm starting to really integrate, and it's becoming what's the word? I can't say it.
Experiential.
Thank you. Experiential. That's a word I have to say 22 times.
There are so many words I get stuck on. I'm like, I'm just not saying the word. It's fine. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm talking about. So it's that, right? It's a lot of needing to actually use it. And I hear people a lot, especially women, because man, there's so much pressure on us as a collective, right? To get it together the first time. Mercy. So I hear it a lot when people say, I knew this, why didn't I do it? Because you haven't actually done it. So it's like in a file somewhere in the back of your head. And then each time you have to reference it, it gets a little closer,
Yeah.
until it's right there. And it's like, oh, I know what I have to do. It's right there. I don't have to go searching for the file and do the thing.
Like, where is it? Is it under the bed?
Right.
Did somebody move it?
And it's because we experience it, it almost then that through that practice, it's almost like muscle memory.
Muscle memory, yep.
You can't tell me anything nowadays. I fall out of bed and fall onto my yoga mat to meditate. Like I don't know how to do anything but that. Right? Like that's how because I've been doing it for so long. So no matter where I'm at, I'm on vacation, I fall out of bed and I start meditating. My daughter's like, even on vacation, especially on vacation.
Vacation is the best time to meditate. Oh my God, I can meditate for like hours on a vacation. I'll just go and sit and meditate and just bye. See you later.
Yes. And I want to be present here, not disconnecting from my work or from whatever else I'm doing. And in order to do that, I have to be present here first in myself, right? In this connection. So yeah, and it's muscle memory. When I first started doing any of these practices, back before you had the cell phone and the calendar, I would put it on a calendar. I had paper notes.
A paper planner?
Yes. And I would like write it on there at a certain time and make it an appointment for myself, because I realized when it came to appointments with other people, I always showed up and held space. When it came to appointments with myself, I was at the bottom of the list. Maybe I'll get to it. Maybe on Saturday when I have more time. Maybe next Tuesday when everything's shut down and there's a storm. Oh, good, there's a storm. I can actually sit and meditate for 10 minutes. Why am I waiting for a storm?
Did your spirit just tell you to tell me that? Because I swear to God, you were talking into my brain of a problem that I had this morning. And I'm like, you've got to be joking right now. Absolutely. Yes. Keep going, please.
Yes. So it's that, like, we tend to do that for ourselves and put ourselves at the very bottom. And so I said, if this is important and I'm saying that it's important, I need to align my words with my actions. So come on, Maria, get your act together, put it on the calendar, make an appointment. And when people would say, are you available at noon? Even if it was like a paid gig, if that was a time I blocked, I say, no, I have a really important appointment. And more likely than not, they go, great, let's pick another time. And what we do is we minimize our importance for the dollar, or we minimize our importance for the venue or the event or the gig or the whatever, or the relationship. But how can I show up fully in those spaces if I'm not showing up fully for myself, right? So I put it on a paper calendar, and now I like my calendar. I don't know if your podcast people will be able to see it, but because I know some people do podcasts with videos, but my calendar.
Oh yeah, no, I totally do it with
like that.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Like
that.
I block.
I like the color coding. Love the color coding.
Mine is color coded too. And again, I've been doing this for so long, right? I started off with a piece of paper taped to a wall. Yellow means this, purple means this. And now I look at it and I'm like, got it. And I know my days are blocked. I carved out time for myself. I carve out time for my daughter, for my most important relationship other than the one with myself, right? I carve out time to write. I carve out time. And it's like, if I'm saying it's important, am I making it a priority? If I say that this particular transformation is important to me, am I making room and time for that transformation to take place, right?
That is so good in so many ways. I have to, hold on, which one do I want to go to first? Because you said something earlier that I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. But then you said something later on. This is the problem when you keep dropping amazing things. Okay, we'll go back to the part where you were talking about, like, when you're on the phone, a paying gig, and someone says, hey, do you have time at that? And that's the time that you block for yourself. And you're like, no, I have a really important meeting. Something about that was like super important, because I hadn't thought of this ever before until just now when you said, no, I have an important meeting. And then I reflected upon how my internal self hears that, right? So now my internal self hears that internal self is so important to me that I'm saying no to this other thing for this. So now that makes me feel special and important. My internal self is, like the two people, right? Which is really powerful, because we're so used, because now think about it the other way, where I'm like, yeah, totally, that meeting isn't important, I'll cancel it. So now the lesson that the internal self is hearing is your appointment isn't important to me.
Right.
And now think about saying that to your kid, right? And if you wouldn't say it to your kid, don't say it to yourself.
Right.
Like, that was so odd. Like, as you were saying that, I was like, oh my God, I just had like an epiphany.
Yeah. And I literally call it very important meeting. I do. When people are like, oh, do you have time? I'm like, oh, not that time. I have a very important meeting that I have to tend to.
I love it. You know what? I might actually start using that. The other thing that I wanted to touch upon, because I think this is actually really so important, because, you talked about how, this isn't, I don't know why I knew that. Why haven't I done it? Or things where we're like for example, the calendar that you just showed where your life is lived by it, right? And I have my own calendar that's very similar that is also lived by it. And I also use a task system, a project manager, because it helps to integrate and those things. But it took me, like, I started doing this again. It was actually November of 2018. So I started, actually it might've been November of 2017, but I started doing it on paper, like you said, handwriting it. And then over time it's evolved into this, right? So my question for you is like, or at least sort of something to like ponder about and hear your thoughts, is that for so many of us, we see your calendar, I want that. And then that's what we start trying to make. We start with that.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you're describing is almost like we need to recognize that it takes us a lifetime to learn some lessons. And it takes us like that we have to, so that everything is a process.
Yes. Yes, everything is a process, and we're getting ready to be ready.
Getting ready to be ready. Oh, this was the theme of our last coaching session, and it was great. It's actually helped me enormously, and I've already done all my action items. Nice. And so okay, so I'm going to pivot a little bit because in our I want to make sure we get this in here because it's super important. So one of my gifts, which you apparently share, which I didn't, I thought I kind of got an inkling of it on the stage when you were telling your story, which, by the way, anyone who has a chance to see Maria live, see her live. She's so good, so much energy, and you'll walk out feeling like you were touched by an angel.
Thank you.
Well, that's how I felt. I stood in line for your book and everything. And I knew you were talking to me, and I was like, oh my God, she's talking to me. And then she talked to, I'll tell you that story later. So, but one of my gifts is analogies. I, at some point in my life, started to find life lessons in like the dumbest shit. So like, there'd be something in the microwave.
Not dumb. Life is the little dumb shit.
It
right?
is so much dumb shit. And it's like,
so it's not dumb. Like that is the magic of life. That's but it's
glitter. It's glitter. Glitter is so simple and but it's so powerful, right?
Yes.
So, and all of these little life lessons, and a lot of it's actually become one of my signature things. People just like, Vanessa will find life lessons out of everything. So when you and I were talking, I was actually talking about the fact that I am struggling because I felt like I've been on the cusp of something for a really, really, really long time. Yeah. And like, I'm so ready. I'm so ready to fly, and I'm trying to meditate. And it's basically like, it's like almost like trying to I've never had a baby, but I assume this is what it feels like when you're like, oh, I want to have a baby. I've had this baby for 9 months. It's time for you to come out. And the baby's not coming out. Like, come on. And the baby's like, no, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
It takes as long as it takes.
That's right.
And so I was like, Maria, how do you deal with this? What do you think? What are your thoughts? And you told me this story that I wanted you to share because I feel like we think that life lessons are always supposed to be big, profound, and be, accompanied by harps and angels and like, right? But sometimes those life lessons are literally raw chicken. Yeah. So now here I got everybody ready for like, now, Maria, I'm struggling with the fact that I can't fly. What is your advice for me?
Oh, so funny. I do want to say this though, before I tell the story about raw chicken. I also used to believe that the only way to learn a profound, life-changing lesson was in pain. And it had to be painful and in struggle. And then when I let that go, I transmuted it. I wrapped it in love. And I was like, how about I learn it in easier ways? It started coming in all the, what you call like the dumb shit, but it started coming in all the easy ways. I'm, well, that's a moment, and that's a moment, and that's right. So I was waiting for something to happen, and I was getting really frustrated, and I was sitting at my computer, and I'm waiting for this response to an email, and it had been, I don't know, 2 whole days. And I was like, no, why isn't it happening? And I was getting so mad. And I had just put a whole chicken in the oven. And I sat down, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of like in this argument with my spirit. And I'm like, what's going on? Why isn't it happening? And my spirit's like, why don't you go pull out that chicken from the oven and eat it? And I'm like, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. No, go eat the chicken. I'm not eating the chicken. Why won't you eat the chicken? Because it's raw. And if I eat it, I'll get sick. Oh, got it. And it's this reminder that a lot of times we want to force something because we live on a timeline. Mm-hmm. And time is a construct. We talked about that. Yeah. Right? Time is a construct. It's not real. And if I was to try and force something, let's say I did decide, I'm so hungry right now, I'm just going to eat this raw chicken. I was not really ready for it. My stomach is not ready to handle raw chicken. And the raw chicken is not cooked to perfection. It is not ready for me. So if I force it, it's going to make me sick. So I started doing this thing where I would feel this kind of angstiness come over me, and like I wanted to hurry up and happen, and I would hear this, it's raw chicken. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's raw chicken. I'm good. I'm not gonna force it. It's gotta bake. It's gotta get ready for me. I'm gonna get ready for it. And I love the idea of being just a little bit hungry when you eat, because when you're just a little bit hungry, the flavors feel more enhanced, the food, the texture, everything is just so much more delicious.
It's an orgasmic experience.
Yes, and not like I'm so hungry, I'm starving, because then you mount the food.
There's no enjoyment. It's like you got to get it in there so fast.
Right, but when you're just a little bit hungry, oh, so good. So I like this idea of waiting until I'm just a little bit hungry, whatever it is, right? I'm over here getting ready to be ready. And then the chicken is getting ready for me. And when we meet, it's gonna be delicious.
Magic's gonna happen.
Magic in my whole face, and my body is gonna just like, it's gonna be so delicious. And that's when I started using the word delicious to describe random things in life. I'm like, oh, it's so delicious. People like you are so weird.
Oh, I love that you call things delicious, yummy. It's like such a you thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I just love it.
It's so yummy. And it's like, I think about like, oh, that's a delicious mental snack. And people go, what?
Oh my God, I love that.
It's a mental snack. Yum. When you look at someone who's attractive, you're like, that person's a whole meal. And I'm looking at lessons in life. Like that's
I like that. That's actually really, I like that idea. It takes it because like that's yeah, okay, that's delicious. I just love that I learned
delicious. And I will in my mind like, that's an appetizer. It's getting me ready for something.
I feel like you need to give you a moment when you said it that way. What was that thought? I was like, what did you just download?
And now I think about those little moments in life that it's like such a nugget, and when you feel it and like that's impactful for you. Ooh, that's an appetizer.
It is. It's amazing. And I think, one of the things that you said earlier, we as women are so conditioned to gaslight ourselves and to like, and to ignore not listen. We've talked about this actually a lot over in many of our sessions about like actually learning to listen to yourself and listen to what you're saying. When did that happen in your life? Like, when did you always listen to your spirits, or did you always, my entire audience is totally, they're totally in this vibe with us, and they've all got their own consortium of people that they talk to. And so the question, so I'm curious to know, did you always listen to your body? Did you always listen to yourself, or did you gaslight yourself at any point in time?
Oh my gosh, of course I did. I live in America, right? Like we are programmed, and at every one of us at some point in our lives, we fall into the status quo, right? And then we behave and act accordingly until we look around and like, why am I here? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be marching with these robots. I don't want to be a sheep. I want to be the lion or the wolf or whatever you want to call it, right? So of course there was ebb and flow in my life. I can't remember the last time. I mean, it's been a long time.
I was gonna say, like, this book is old. Like, I mean, it's not old. It's how old is it? It's like, feels like you're right. It was 2017. So we're like talking, that's about 6 years. So the book is 6 years old. So at least, and you wrote it after you'd already started. So we're talking probably like 20 years, right?
Yeah. So I've been in the practice for a long time, but I will say that I know that I've had it when I was younger. I didn't know what it was, and I thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
And to be able to hear this higher version of yourself, or your spirits, or your angels, whatever you want to call them, right? To be able to hear it and then discern, I think I must be like schizophrenic, or I must be bipolar, or something must be wrong with me, because it's not talked about. Right. And then there are these pockets of life. And I shared this with you when I became a Christian and I was part of Christianity. It was normal to hear from the Holy Spirit. So I thought, oh, finally, I'm not crazy. I found a place where I belong, because I can hear this now more clearly because I'm inviting this relationship.
Right. Because you're not thinking I'm crazy, go away. You're now thinking like, Holy Spirit, come to me.
Yes. And then it really gave me an opportunity to kind of sharpen the ability to hear myself, my body, my intuition, this kind of peace and guidance that's meant to guide us all. I do believe that our peace is meant to both guide us and protect us, right? So if we're listening And we have to play and practice, and we have to muck it up, because that's the only way to go, like, I knew it. I knew I mucked it up, and I knew because I heard it. And I knew it. Now I know for next time, because it's experiential, right? We have to integrate it and play in it and practice it for a while. And so it's from doing that over and over and over again. And then I got to a point where I realized, oh, this label and this structure of Christianity is not for me. Right? I feel like my version of God is bigger than this, and it felt very claustrophobic. And I'm not claustrophobic, but that idea of being contained and stay in this box, stay in this box. So I went from one type of box to another, but it was a necessary transition in order for me to develop that connection. This kind of ability to hear my higher self and my spirit. And now, like I said, I just practice, and I'm listening all the time.
Well, now I'm going to tell the story that I promised to tell earlier about, like, okay, so when I went to buy the book, so of course I saw Maria on stage, and I was like, and I didn't know that she was selling her book later. I happened to see, and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting one of these. So I get in line, and there's lots of people. There's a couple of people in line, and so I'm standing right, adjacent to her and talking to, I guess, your assistant, and you're signing for somebody else. So I bought the book and a t-shirt, and I'm looking at this, and you're finishing signing up, and then I put the book down in front of you, and I'm reading the title, and it says, How Connecting to God and Personal Responsibility Brought My Life from Struggle to Sparkle. And I thought to myself, interesting, while you're writing, I never would have thought, I didn't think that you were, and I don't mean this in the judgy way. I just meant like you get a vibe from people, and I got a vibe that was not Christian. I got a different vibe. And I was like, that's interesting. I didn't get the vibe. And I said that in my brain. I did not say those words out loud. And then Maria said,
heard it.
She literally heard it from my brain. And she goes, the reason that I talk about God here is because, and then she told this story. And I looked at her and I said, you do realize you just answered a question I didn't actually ask out loud, right? And I was just like, that was then. But I was like, oh my God, how do I find I'm going to your website. I'm going to work with you like right now.
And what's so interesting is that I didn't get that question from anybody else's energy. And you were the only person in that whole line that I shared that with. And I'm very open about my journey, and I share it very openly, but you were the only person that I felt like I need to say this out loud to her. And my spirit's like, tell her right now. Okay. So I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
It was funny because your assistant even commented on that. She's like, you didn't say that to anybody else. And you're like, it wasn't for anybody else. It's for them. And I was like, oh my God. Fast. I think I booked you like right away. I went home. And I was like, okay, will you be my coach? Okay. So I know that we need to wrap up. So I want to leave everyone with this. First of all, Maria is a speaker. And she is incredible. So if you are looking for a keynote speaker or a speaker to come and work with your institution, whether it's a nonprofit, an organization, big, small, doesn't matter, go to our website, mariamilagros.com, and the
.net.
going to .net. Oh, me too. I'm directedsuccess.net. Drives me. I keep forgetting that for myself. .net. She's like me, everybody. And I will put it in the show notes, so you can definitely click on that. I want you to know where to go find her. But I want to hear from you, Maria. If people want to work with you, if people want to get just exposed to your awesomeness, what are the ways in which you work with people now in your business and in your life?
Oh, okay. Yummy. So I like to think of my work as tiered, right? And like the bigger tier is the bigger impact rather is speaking, being on a stage, talking to multiple people, conferences like you had mentioned. And thank you for that plug, by the way. The next tier is coaching. I do both small group coaching on Monday evenings, evening 4 to 5:30. So we do small group coaching, and then I also do one-on-one coaching. And then the next tier is like the book and YouTube and social media. So that way, depending on where you are financially, I don't try to force anyone, right? And I want you to honor where you're at in realistically financially where you are in your life. And there was a woman who sent me this email last year, 2022, January of 2022, where she followed my YouTube videos for a year and sent me this beautiful email about how the videos changed her life. And she started implementing the practices that I share in the videos. And by doing it and committing to herself, it changed her life because she couldn't afford the coaching at the time. And I thought, okay, good. That's why I do this. Great. Because like there's something that I'm for everyone, right? And if you want that more one-on-one, we can do one-on-one coaching. If you want to do it in a small group, we have small group coaching. And if you want to do it for your community, holla at your girl. I'll get
Yes.
you.
And then tell me where it is so I can come, because like, oh my God, I love seeing you speak. You were saying, you said something that I wanted to actually hit upon, where you're talking about, the Instagram videos and YouTube. Yes. So at a minimum, everyone should go follow Maria. We don't talk shoulds here. Psh, no shitting. Everyone wants to go follow. And here's why. My journey to health, my listeners have been with me for a while, so they know that my journey to health started by, I didn't have the stamina. It wasn't at the time, actually, it wasn't even money. It was, I didn't have the stamina to be able to hire anybody. Like, I just didn't have the will. In Urdu, the word is himmat, and it just means like, it comes from within. It's like this deep-seated energy, like you just don't have it. And I didn't have himmat. So HIMMAT. So I just didn't have the himmat to do it. And so it's a very visceral type of feeling. So I started following people on Instagram, and that little bit, I just stopped following some people on Instagram who were negative and started following some people who were positive. That change alone moved me a little bit along the needle, like a little bit along the way. And then I was able to do something else, and just, it starts in like these really baby steps. And I think that sometimes when we're at the bottom, even the tiniest step can seem ginormous. So literally go to your Instagram, follow Maria now, and that's it. And then unfollow one person who makes you feel sad. And that's it. That's one step. I love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. That's what we're going to do. I always
talk about, like, clean up your algorithm. Clean up your algorithm.
Yeah.
Right. We spend way too much time and energy on social media. And if we know that to be true about ourselves, clean it up. Make it something that's supporting, not sabotaging who you want to become.
Oh my God. So good. That's the mic drop we're ending with, everybody. So thank you. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me.